Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks, and of course, co hosts of this channel. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. And today, on this third pillar of exploration, Thursday, we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about Starro the Conqueror. Like, what is Starro the Conqueror? How is Starro the Conqueror? Which is Starro the Conqueror? Well, the movie give you some context, the movie The Suicide Squad, as opposed to Suicide Squad, has been released on HBO Max and in the movie theaters. And of course, I've just seen it. And it made me think about this idea of like monsters and kaiju. So from the trailers only, we're not going to give out any spoilers. Hopefully, we'll avoid most of the spoilers. There is a pretty ridiculous comic book villain in this movie and in the series in general, in DC Comics in general. And this monster is called Starro the Conqueror. And according to the its portrayal in the trailer, it's a giant kaiju. And of course, if you're a geek like I am, kaiju is the general term for giant monsters. And these things are at the minimum the size of most skyscrapers, if not larger. And they love to uh, walk themselves through most urban areas, destroying buildings and all that kind of stuff. And I said, it made me think about their use in role playing games, and I was like, wait a minute. According to the trailer, and mind you, all other kaiju movies and giant robot movies, I was like, wait a minute. Why aren't they? I feel like they're not as dangerous, according to mere mortals, if you're playing them as a protagonist in your favorite role playing game. They're not as lethal as they pretend to be. And today being Third Pillar Thursday, the first and second pillars being combat and social interaction, respectively, the third pillar is exploration. And I take exploration to mean the environment itself, encompassing the entire concept of exploring the unknown, wandering through major cities, and of course, all the dangers and hazards that comes with exploration. And a lot of these giant monsters, these gargantuan, colossus, titan size, whatever you want to call them, whatever labels you want to put on them, I feel like their mere presence itself is in of itself a giant beacon of dangerous environment just by their mere presence. And so I thought we would talk about it, maybe come up with, if it doesn't exist in your favorite role-playing game, we tend to talk Dungeons and Dragons and other D20 systems, but we talk many, many other gaming systems as well. Like, maybe there's a way for us to change that fact. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Mike. Always stealing, always getting to my brain before my brain gets to me. Anyway, Mike says, kaiju should be less of a monster and more of a force of nature. I can't agree with you more. Like, the prototypical Tarrasque in Dungeons and Dragons, even the depending on which, you know 3.x, fourth edition, fifth edition, when you read some of the bio, it's like the gods have created it to reshape the earth, or it's been awakened every 1,000 years. And I'm like, I love the concept of that, but I'm like, I don't I don't feel like it's this world shaker. And there is a an old AD&D module called World Shaker, or maybe before that, maybe it's Beck Me. But anyway, I don't feel like it's the thing that they're describing. Anyway, Mike goes on to say, for instance, the Kraken mentions being a siege weapon. If the Kraken does not worry you, having a building dropped on you should. Exactly. Like, most of if we take a look at our favorite monster movies, listen, some of the fun parts of it, and it's a shame it is fun, but some of the greatest parts of your favorite giant monster movies is watching all the innocent people get trounced by by the mere presence of the monster. Hell, Godzilla is the protagonist in along with King Kong, is the protagonist in most of their movies. And how many innocent people are just like, oh, I'm driving my car, I'm walking down the street, I'm just hanging out in the jungle. And like these things are like um football fields away from these monsters, and they still are, people are still screaming in terror as this Godzilla's tail sweeps through the city or something. It's just you barely get Godzilla's attention, and yet the body counts are immense, and I feel like these monsters aren't that way. They don't come across that way. Anyway, Mike Gould says purple worms, as mentioned before, should collapse the ground as they burrow under you. Oh, I agree with that too. I mean, I feel like purple worms themselves almost make their own dungeons, their own Underdark dungeons, just simply by the tunnels they make that might collapse in on you. A purple worm under a castle, bye bye castle, right? Mike says, I can see things like the Tarrasque or the Kraken should affect local weather. Yep. They should be such a rare occurrence that local wildlife will flee in droves. Yes. They literally disrupt everything around. Like, we, uh, natural phenomenon in our world, major blizzards, especially like tornadoes, hurricanes, volcanoes, earthquakes, forest fires, like they reshape society, right? You get a major volcanic eruption. Wasn't there? I'm just coming up with some of these things. Major forest fires in Australia that was so massive. Satellite images were capturing the smoke clouds. There was one with a volcanic eruption that happened that swept ash over top of Great Britain, the England area, and I believe it covered even other nations. Here in the United States, we have a hurricane season and tornado season. We have Tornado Alley, and there are whole YouTube channels that are dedicated to following this, and whole communities have just been wiped off the map. These monsters are exactly like that. I feel like they're not given their due. Hey, Dead Man says there was a planet in Spelljammer with a world covered with Tarrasques. Yeah, a world of Tarrasques. Jeez. Um, I don't know where I got this imagery from, but I imagined a place where there were cities being carried on the backs of giants. And the giants were moving so slow. They were moving, but they were moving very slow, like walking across an eternally flat plain. But the giants were so big that there was just no way you could fight them. Um, they were literally just a force of nature. I don't know. Michael says they should be the living embodiment of a massive storm. The Tarrasques should be feared like tornadoes, and Kraken should be maelstrom and whirlpools. Hell, ancient red dragons should cause forest fires. Yeah, I'm with you, and I think there is a way for us to solve that problem, but I feel like there's something I'm going to say that's blasphemous when it comes to player characters, and I think it could be very easily incorporated into, say, fifth edition, but I can see players being completely pissed off. So let me put this out there. I'll put this comment back up here by Mike, and then we'll talk a little bit about Starro itself and some of its capabilities, because you kind of get the hint, like, oh, because Starro as a comic book villain of sorts kind of changes things, because to be honest with you, side note, Starro the Conqueror in comic books itself is a comic book world changer. There are many times where you guys, if you've ever read comic books of any type, sometimes they'll do a storyline that covers multiple issues, and it's like it's one of those yearly events where like Starro the Conqueror has conquered our favorite heroes across 15 comic book lines as they all converge into a single point. There was another character named Eclipso, and Eclipso was doing a thing. Eclipso had like an eclipsed face and whatnot, and a gem that had like mind control and would do a thing. And we've seen this storyline, whether it's Secret Wars or Secret Invasion or and so on and so forth. We've seen these before. And Starro the Conqueror has been used that way. Ultron in the Marvel comics has been used. Ultron number 13 and number 27 and what has been used that way. Dead Man brings, Mount St. Helens. Dead Man says Mount St. Helens in 1980 rained down ash on India. Yes, those who don't know, Mount St. Helens exploded, and listen, I was a kid of a certain age that remember in 1980, I was 10 years old, and I remember, like, unlike our classic image of a volcano with like the molten lava coming out the top of this peak or something, Mount St. Helens was literally a mountain that disappeared in an instant. The pressure just built, and the whole side of the mountain was just blasted into the sky. And I just remember the panic and the fear, and it was on television for months as the ash and debris rained down. Like, it seemed like forever. It was just this cloud, and you're looking, and you got this image of these clouds like weeks later, and you're like, why is it still in the air? And it just bothers me. So one thing, here's something I think for giant kaiju sized monsters that can be incorporated in role-playing games, especially, let's say, at 5th edition as a perfect example, is that maybe these monsters just can't, they are tier level resistant. So in 5th edition, they have tier levels, tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they correspond to levels of characters, but they also correspond to scope of characters. So a tier 1 character, usually like level 1 through 4, is the zero. Before they become hero, they're zeros. They deal with local events. Most movies, Game of Thrones as an example, because I want to make something relevant, most television and movies, our characters are only tier 1. Some of them might graduate to tier 2, but most of them are pretty mortal, and that's tier 1. And I think one way would be to have legendary monsters cut off by tier. If it's a tier 3 legendary monster, tier 1 and tier 2 characters have the inability to affect them at all. They are just a force of nature. And if you're like a tier 3, you're labeled as a tier 3 legendary angelic being or giant monster or something, you could pop an arrow at it all you want. There's nothing you can do to it. And the story, I can hear players going like, oh, you can't do that. But I think the story would be not defeating the monster, but solving the problem. Whether it means surviving in a world where this monster or these monsters roam around and you just have to run for it. It might be doing a thing that solves a problem that's not about hitting it about the head and shoulders. And maybe it's a battle of the gods or something. Maybe divine beings are tier 5, divine beings. And when they're doing battle in the sky, stepping over mountains, punching each other in the face, and literally their chest and head are breaking through the clouds or something. Maybe there's nothing your player can do. Maybe you just have to survive that effect. And yeah, I don't know. Mike says, I can remember the effect in Nova Scotia when New Brunswick struggled with forest fires. I went to work one morning and the sky, all of it everywhere. Yes. Ooh, wow, was yellow. It had an apocalyptic effect. Yeah. Yeah. We don't even think about the fact that, like, the ash in the air is like, it's like a dust. It's like a choking snow. It blots out the sun. It affects temperatures where the temperature will drop and it'll feel like it's frigid, even though it might be in the middle of our summertime or something. It's crazy how these things can affect the world. Mike continues on and says, everything was lightly obscured at moderate distances like a fog, and the sky dimmed. I fully expected something awful to walk out of the smoke. It was terrifying, and we were hundreds of kilometers away. Yeah, yeah. I feel like our concept of these monsters just hasn't been embraced in the role-playing world. Like they have hit points and armor class, and I'm going, yeah, that's. I mean, I get it. If you are a tier 3, tier 4 hero, yes, you would be able to fight these things. You are demigods at that point. But on the other hand, the even in some of their descriptions, we hear about them shattering mountains, and when they stride across the earth, they shake the ground. And I think moving on into what other effects they could have, I don't even I would even I guess you could classify these as a combination of legendary actions and lair actions, but I feel like it's not their lair. I feel like wherever they go, these things should be happening around them. And I think we could pull from, if we just use 5th edition, of course, as our example, I think having a small list of external effects that they do just by their mere presence, I think would work. Like, yeah, maybe just by their presence, they make miles or kilometers of fog, and it might not be classic fog moisture in moisture particulates in the air. It might just be from the dust is kicked up because of such debris that they just destroy. It's a dust cloud behind them, and you realize that's not a dust cloud. That's literally pulverized landscape that's being kicked into the air or something. What's a couple of other things? The earthquake spell might be something that's just a natural event from them walking around. Maybe there's, I mean, can you imagine the giant sized pits that are created just from their footsteps? Um, uh, the the Kraken and some other giant monsters are considered siege machines, but where are the rules for sieging things? You know, um, even what's a trap? The collapsing ceiling trap. About to say spell. The collapsed ceiling trap, which might not even be big enough, might correspond to buildings falling down, or the landscape being crushed and tumbling down in and around our heroes and people. Of course, everywhere there's stride, there's difficult terrain. I think difficult terrain is fine as a start. It's pretty static and not very interactive, but yeah, it's crazy. Mike says, I've seen videos of forest fires in Alberts years ago. You can actually hear the fire roaring like a living thing from inside the cars. Yeah, sometimes the heat is so great it creates heat vortexes, like heat tornadoes. It's crazy seeing some of these. The flames towered like skyscrapers. A kaiju-sized elemental uh, came to mind. Yeah, the heat sometimes it it's sucking in so much oxygen that it changes the direction of the air. Oh, Alberta. Oh, okay, I didn't. Oh, yeah, I see. That should have been Alberta. I thought that was a reference. That's how you referred to it. That's why I didn't correct it in my head. I mean, verbally. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Dead Man says the planet of Taras was called Falx. I thought, who was a creator? Was it Sly Flourish? Somebody ran a game where the players landed on the planet of Tarasks and ran it. And I thought they made it up, but I mean, a planet of Tarasks. I mean, are they just hit point sponges that just roam around on a planet, or should they be reshaping that friggin' thing? Right? Even the movie Dune is coming out soon, and you've got those giant worms. There, and I guarantee you, the purple worms in Dungeons and Dragons are an allusion. They are a reference to the worms of Dune. And yeah, they should be. They burrow under the ground. They should be collapsing mountains and reshaping forests, and lakes and rivers are getting sucked down into sinkholes and whatnot. I just feel like these giant monsters are undersold, and there's ways for us to do that. I would make a list of environmental effects that would happen randomly, just by their mere presence before the players even get their attention, and just have the players have to navigate in the world where, oh, we went. we took that trade route 3 days ago, and they come back around and like it doesn't exist anymore at all. Mike Gould says elementals are one creature not given their due. I agree with you on that one. They're so small in 5e that we just disregard them. Scale that up to kaiju, and you have forest fire elementals, tidal wave elementals, hurricane elementals. Yeah, yeah. I think they're undersold too. And the Earth version would be a rock slide or earthquake elemental. Um, yeah, they're not scaled up. I think some of these monsters could be scaled up tier wise, and even I don't know. I get it. I remember having, you know, as kids, we always argue about dumb things like who would win, Superman or Mighty Mouse or something. Yes, I'm old enough to remember Mighty Mouse on television, and you get the argument like, well, Mighty Mouse isn't real, as if Superman is. But even in our context, I feel like we loved seeing the artwork of like the dragon. Let's go back to like the classic, red dragon, or not always red, but the classic dragon and the hero, the knight with their sword and shield facing the dragon. And we used to sit back like, wait a minute, there's no there's no friggin' way this mere mortal is going to slay this dragon at all. Like, that little sword there's nothing that sword can do to that dragon. I'm going to hold my shield up and stop the flame. No, you're not. That's like, that's like napalm. It'll just wrap around that shield and burn you from the inside. Like, what? And we, mind you, it's sarcasm, right? But it's like, you do realize your longsword isn't going to do much to this thing. Not only will it not penetrate it, but like, you're not going to lop off its limbs, let alone pierce its hide. You're just going to be like, poke, 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 poke. It should be ignoring you, what is it? One of the Godzilla movies, they had paratroopers jump out of planes to uh, jump out of planes or helicopters or something near Godzilla, and Godzilla was so big that the imagery was, when you zeroed in on the people falling down, it looked like they were just like skydiving down past a building, and then when it zoomed out, they were like these little tiny little specks falling down next to Godzilla, and you're like, no, you're not going to do anything to this creature. Michael says a para-elemental volcano magma elemental walking the earth is terrifying. Ooh, para-elementals and quasi-elementals? Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, big giant earthen humanoid. It doesn't even have to look humanoid, but like a big earthen humanoid with like glowing eyes and a mouth with magma on the inside, and it lobs a glob of magma so big it covers, it just slams up against the castle side and just melts the side of it as thousands of people run for their lives or something. Yeah, we don't see that too often, these giant monsters. All right, so Starro the Conqueror, hard segue. Starro the Conqueror is a giant, obnoxiously silly looking, although in the movie it actually looks really good. Even though it still looks silly, it looks like a starfish, and in the very center of that starfish isn't like an eyeball. It looks like a target. Honestly, let's see if we can get an image of Starro here. But yeah, it's there's a big eyeball in the middle, and of course it looks like, 5-point starfish and whatnot. It looks like that. Let's see if we can get an image here and share it amongst you guys. Yep, getting the tab up. There we go. Will my face be over it? Let's close the chat down so you get a bigger image there. There it is above my head. And and that, of course, it's standing in giant, in a ton of rubble and whatnot. And there's this weird shifty eyeball in the middle of it. But here's something else that Starro the Conqueror. Yeah, I agree with you. Because in the movie, I'm going to shift the image just a little bit if we could see some of the imagery. Uh there's a good, maybe we could pull that up. No. No, let's close that down. I got to show you the facial I got to show you the facial stuff. Here it is. All right, so I know it's on the I'm on the opposite side. I wish I could just move me over. Oops. No, nah, it's not going to work. All right. Anyway, something that Starro can do is Starro, big giant kaiju starfish shaped thing. One of the things it can do is it releases these little spawns, these little saprolings. It's maybe children or something like that, and they escape. And much like I'm going to give something that's going to bother you guys, a little Lovecraftian thing. Much like the face huggers from Alien and the Aliens franchise, the Star of the Conqueror releases these little small things that like wrap around the faces of its victims and mind controls them and use them as a host. And so all of them start speaking. Like Starro can't speak, the giant starfish thing can't speak, but it can speak and communicate and telepathically like a hive mind through these people that are captured. And so one threat that a lot of these giant monsters can have is maybe it creates another horror on a smaller scale by eggs, larvae, insects, debris. It's not debris, but like effluvia that it casts off of its body. Maybe it ejects some kind of fluid or eggs or something of that nature. Now, to give you a little bit of a H.R. Geiger thing, who has done some amazing art. The face hugger from Alien and the Aliens franchise is actually based on. Let's see. Let's switch out the face here. The face hugger from Alien is actually based on two hands. Yay, two hands, thumbs, fingers, all elongated. Okay, now here's a little very adult description. And in the center of the palms of the hands of these face huggers is male and female genitalia. And it literally was designed to feel like sexual assault on anyone, specifically men. And it was designed to be this sickening, invasive, domineering alien thing that's supposed to make you feel like you are being assaulted in the worst way. And it was designed that way. And I have to agree, pretty good job. Pretty good job. As nasty as it is. Oh man. Anyway, my co-host mentioned Starro would benefit from some Lovecraftian marketing. I agree. In the comic books, as all comic book creations, if you go back far enough, most of them were pretty cheesy. Most of them were not really thought about in the manner of like horror or like body horror or assault or adult themes. But over time, those of us like ourselves who end up being kids reading these things and becoming a man of a certain age get hired into that genre and then go, dude, you know how crazy that was? Here's how I would change it. And yeah, yeah. Oh man. Deadman says Shadowrun had Force 12 elementals, which were 4 meters, about 12 feet tall, that could be summoned by mages, or a Force 24 elemental summoned by dragons that is 8 meters, about 24 feet tall. Yeah, I think maybe instead of, much like a lot of love has been given to dragons in Dungeons and Dragons for quite some time. Yeah, young adult, mature worms, elder worms, and whatnot. And there's been pages and pages of how many age levels of dragons. Maybe some love should have been given to at least our giant, massive, colossal, titan-sized brethren. That there is an elemental fire, and it's only the size of, or maybe again half a head taller than our local heroes, and it's like a tier 2 monster. But then we have the ones that are massive, these massive flaming tornadoes that reach to the sky, and maybe some love should have been given to them as well. I don't know. Yeah. Mike says, imagine the roar of a kraken or terrace causing madness. Uh, their roar, madness, deafness. Them just roaring would probably, I don't know, like not a storm of high winds. Just their roar, I think, would knock most flying creatures out of the sky. Uh, their mere presence, remember dragon fear? Why is I wonder why that fear effect wasn't applied to some of these massive monsters as a just by their mere presence being attached to these monsters. Like, oh, hey, guess what? All kaiju monsters have the following, and then just have a list have these tags or something. I guess maybe they didn't want to make it as pathfindery, like trying to attach a bunch of feats to monsters and you got to memorize all the feats stuff. But yeah, I think a massive elemental, something that's a god killer. Yeah, fear effects. Mm-mm-mm. Causing madness. Yeah, people just not just fear, but people drooling. Like, yeah, I stood in the shadow of Godzilla. I'm not going to be too good. Mike says, spoiler for What If. Uh, Shumagorath looked a lot more menacing than in any Doctor Strange comic. I don't know what that reference is unless you're referring to animated The What If. I've only partially seen one episode, and that's Captain Carter. The What If Peggy Carter got the serum instead of Captain America, but or instead of Steve Rogers. Wow, Peggy Carter got it instead of Steve Rogers. Yeah. Uh, hey, AG. AGR says even just a courage test. Yeah, just standing up to a beastly titan should be a challenge. I agree. Oh yes, the animated one. See, I've only well, it looks like Disney Plus here in the States is dropping one episode a week, and they're doing it in order. So the only one that dropped was Captain Carter. Uh, but yeah, I feel like a courage test. I mean, can you imagine just getting slapped by one of these giant monsters? Just yeah, the first Captain Britain. Yeah, some people were like, wouldn't she just be Captain Britain? Because Captain America, Captain Britain. Well, technically, I guess you could make the argument. Well, first of all, there's already a character called Captain Britain, and maybe they didn't want to conflate the two. Also, Steve Rogers has a rank called Captain in the MCU, and so he is Captain Rogers. He ends up when he goes on the MCO tour, USO tour to get people to buy war bonds. That's Captain America. He's still Captain Rogers. He's only called Captain America because that's a persona he puts on. So you could make that argument too. So calling her Captain Carter was just it was like, we don't want to confuse people to make Captain Britain, and then she's technically not Captain America, and she's not technically Captain Britain, so that's why that's the Captain Carter. But I got to say something. And listen, you know, it's only between us. Like the portrayal of that character, the height, the strength, and stuff like that. She Hulk. That's I understand. We're not trying to body shame you, Gal Gadot. Not body shaming you at all. Beautiful woman and everything. But honestly, that's the portrayal of like Wonder Woman we were thinking of. Sorry. So, and not every female character should be built like that. I think we're just in our brains, our geeky brains, we're like, Wonder Woman should be a minimum of like 6.5 feet tall. Like, muscle is moving like that. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, you said Mike's the same in Canada with the dropping of the things. I didn't know that. Dead Man mentions the What If character was Shuma Gorath. I don't know what you guys are referring to. Is that the third episode or something? I don't. Oh, I don't know what you guys are referring. Okay, so I, I think another way we can do massive monsters would be to divide up a massive monster by limbs and then have I didn't get that far into the episode because the tech the tech overload was so great that when I go to my Disney Plus, it takes so long to load up that I wasn't able to watch it all the way through because that's I didn't get to the end of the episode. That's what where's my fist? that's that's what happened. I didn't get to the end of the episode. Let's put the chat back in, even though for some reason once I do that up on the side, it just doesn't come back. It doesn't let the come back, chat. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. Now I think another thing that could be done with massive monsters, especially the more animalistic ones, although you could easily translate this to a more humanoid style monster, would be to or kaiju size thing would be to separate its limbs as individual fifth edition monsters if we're going fifth edition. So, for example, let's go with let's go with a giant thing like a Godzilla. Let's go with a humanoid. So each of its legs and arms might be its own danger and or armor class and or hit point total. So a giant spider would have 8 limbs. A giant crab might have like 6 limbs, 6 legs, and like 2 pincers or something. And you could attack the thing, you could attack its limbs, which each of them might be able to cause some kind of damage, like Godzilla's tail, or one of its legs, or one of its little scrawny arms, or something like that. Maybe it's got tentacles draping from it or lashing out of its back. And then you would also have a main body. And the players may have to decide, okay, I can attack the main body, but that does nothing to stop any of its limbs from causing massive damage to the surrounding neighborhoods, countryside, and attacking other players. Or I attack a limb, hopefully to separate it from the body, blast it away, burn it, slash it, whatever, paralyze it. But the main body is the thing that's carrying this monster around, and that doesn't stop the main body. If you attack the main body, you can stop the whole entire thing, or you attack the limbs and try to cut the limbs. You know what I mean? Like a giant octopus kraken. Yeah, like you can cut off all the tentacles of the kraken, but the main body is the thing that's carrying it around. Or you attack the main body, but that does nothing to stop the limbs. And I feel like that's a good concept for a puzzle monster, a conditional monster that is the type of entity that makes the players think hard, like, oh, the point is to save the population, let's attack the limbs, where one player's like, you know what, we could stop this monster in its tracks by attacking its body. Also, much like the idea of using like lair actions and legendary actions, I also feel like I think some of these monsters should have abilities that far surpass even some of the gamifiedness in it. Like, if if a Tarrasque smacks you, backslaps you, that not only should you, of course, suffer maybe some bludgeoning damage or something, but I think there should be some residual effect, like how far do you get knocked back? Do you get stunned and knocked prone and broken bone? Like, I feel like there should be a stepped threat level, that if you get stepped on by Godzilla, it's more than just, oh, I take bludgeoning damage. I've just suffered 87 hit points. Scratch off list, right? I think it feels like maybe you should get jammed down into the ground and debris falls on top of you, and you like gum, you're stuck to the bottom of the foot and you can't peel yourself off of it as it takes another step and steps on you again. Mm-mm-mm. Oh man. Oops. Ooh. Whoa. 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 Let's see. Debian says posted in the Marvel database entry on Shumagarath in the Discord. Oh. Shumagarth multiverse. Hmm. Very Lovecraftian. Very. Let's see if we pull this up here. Uh, will it let me? Some ads. Hyborian Age. Let's get a good image of it here. Shumagarth. I think there's a way for. There it is. Before time was, I waited. I fed on the screaming souls of the universes. I drank the spoiled milk of dead stars. I am the emptiness outside of all understanding. I am Shumagorath. It's a quote from, well, Shumagorath. Hey, if you're gonna be a horrible Lovecraftian monster, uh, you might want to have a little bit of a little bit of quote for yourself that you get to put on your own T-shirts that you sell as you're destroying a couple of universes. Yeah. Mike Gould says this reminds me that I need to make a kaiju-sized being based on Hunger of Hadar, thanks to the actions of PCs in Ember. Ooh, yeah. That happened. Also answers a question: how do players end the campaign? Yeah, how do they end the campaign? They're like, remember those arms of Hadar, those dark arms that spell? Yeah, maybe you've been opening a portal to another world of eldritch horror or something. Also DM'd image in Messenger. Ooh, ooh. Let me see. Mm, 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 mm. I turn off my notification. Well, I have a notification thing that I use to ensure that I don't you don't hear the pings and stuff like that. So let me see if I can pull this up. Ooh, there's an image, and can I get it larger? Nah, I can't get it larger, but that's a good one. All right, yeah, let's see if we can get this. Is it a tab? No. Mm. Oh, there it is. Okay. It's not a. I can't get it larger than that. I could try to, but yeah. That's it. No, I can't. It won't. Oops, sorry about that. Boom. There we go. There we go. Korath. That's sweet. Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like a monster. Of course, a lot of these giant monsters, they're in major cities. They're tossing cars and giant buildings. Not so much in fantasy do we see that kind of thing happening, but still, a giant tentacled monster that can rip trees out of the ground and use them as throwing sticks or something, or a monster that like literally can lean up against a giant tower and knock it over. I feel like we are losing a little bit of the threat level of the this thing is destroying the countryside and we need to stop it uh, effects. Now, mind you, could we create it ourselves? Of course, of course we could. I feel like I feel like you could even make a giant monster category, much like we have size categories: medium, large, huge. What's above that? Huge, gargantuan, whatever, colossal or something. Anyway, I think we could do like Titan sized or Kaiju sized or something like that. Like just do one level above whatever is in fifth edition, so you don't have to like ruin it. And then above that, do the like you have a size category that's above, and then any creature, any monster, or actually any bad guy you want to throw them into that category and go, oh yeah, by the way, now someone a while ago, and I apologize for not being able to call out this person, someone a while ago had a home rule uh, that stated that reduce whenever you're fighting something that is a size category above you or below you, um, increase or decrease the die type based on your conflict with them. So, fifth edition, And I like the rule. It sounds a little complicated, but I think it's pretty easy. So what is it? A fireball does 8d6 damage, and you are a medium-sized wizard, and you go, I'm going to cast a fireball. Well, against large creatures, it would do 8 die 4 instead of 8 die 6. Or my longsword does a die 8 damage. Against a large creature would be d6, against a huge creature would be d4, and above that, sorry, unless, you might reduce that. And then with magical items, you could extend the magic item based on maybe its bonus. So if it's a +1, that means you carry the die level up 1. If it's +2, you carry it up two levels, etc. So a +3 longsword would do a die 8 against medium, and then with a +1 it would be against large, and then it's got another +1 against huge, and I don't know what's above huge. Is it gargantuan? There's something else I'm missing in the size category. So we'll be able to go 3 levels up, that kind of thing. I like that idea. It sounds complicated, but it's just as complicated as anything else. You do it a couple times and you go, oh, especially if you have a setting where it's all giant monsters, then the PCs are like, oh, I get it. Oh, we're attacking fire giants. They are huge. They're 2 levels above me. I guess my D10 goes down to D10, D8. It does a D6 damage. Great. Give me 2D6 instead. Roll. Boom. Done. Whatever. Is it a perfect idea? No, but it's easy to implement. It's no better or worse, I think, than me saying, oh, certain monsters are restricted by tier level, and if you're tier 2, tier 3 and above monsters, you might as well just forget it. Mike Gould says, we've argued in the past for giants affecting the environment as well. Yeah. Again, they are basically tiny kaiju. Yeah. They need to be able to cleave with trees and building structures. They need stomp attack. Yeah. I just can you a giant no, not a giant monster. A giant stomping their foot on the ground should make things fall down. Your horse falls over, you shaking the ground, or heck, just them. I mean, we already know, what is it? Stone giants pick up boulders, or most of the giants can pick up a boulder and throw it. Why wouldn't they be able to pick up a person and toss you? Or when they pick up that boulder and throw it at you, that they bowl you down, or they can kick over, they can punch the side of a castle wall and knock it over on top of you or something like that. Yeah, I absolutely. The classic taking a deep breath and blowing you over, or the classic Hulk thing where Hulk claps his hands together and can deafen you and blast you back or something, or the stomping on the ground and causing the earth to turn into a tidal wave effect. I don't know. AG says, interesting idea. So D2 weapons would do nothing against a larger opponent. Yep. What about a D12 against small becomes D20? Sure, why not? Or worse, you could do I know this would hurt people's feelings, but you could do auto death and invulnerability. So if you go die 6, die 4, die 2, maybe, or you just do 1 point, much like how a punch does 1 point of damage plus whatever your strength mod is. Maybe it's the same way. If you surpass D4, it's just a point plus whatever your mod is, and that's it. If you pierce the armor class or something, I guess you could make it worse by doing levels of armor class. That this becomes a little more math oriented. If you are below armor class levels, you just add 2 or subtract 2. So instead of modifying the damage, it's that monster has a 15 armor class, but it's large. So, and you're medium. So instead of 15, it's now 17 or below, right? You're hey, I take my foot and step on the wasp, even though it's the size of a rat. Oh, well, you kill it. Oh, all right. So Mike says I know the size categories. So it's tiny, small, medium, large, huge, gargantuan. Yes. Colossal used to exist and should again, unless I missed something. Colossal wasn't it the 3.x era? 3.5? 5.0, something like that. I think Colossal was in there, and I think even in second edition, I think they even implemented like a Titan level because Titans were above like Storm Giants and Cloud Giants somewhere in there. Mike also says second edition D&D had an optional massive death rule where a single attack that did 50 hit points or more meant a saving throw or death. Cannot remember if 5e has one. I don't believe 5e. Well, I believe it's an optional rule and it doesn't work exactly the same way. I believe it's if you take more damage than your, it's either 50% or more of your hit point total, or it's over your constitution. It's one of those. And it's a, yeah, System Shock. System Shock was a thing in a percentage from second edition. Yeah, System Shock was a percentage roll from second edition. He sure was. System Shock roll. You rolled your System Shock to see if you suffer so much damage, you might just die. Also, I think System Shock worked for revivifying resurrection kind of spells as well. You had to make a System Shock roll. And I think it's an optional rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide for suffering so much damage. Maybe there's a way to modulate that too. Like, oh, we're going to use this optional rule from the DMG, and guess what? It's above gargantuan level, so you have disadvantage on it or something. Or much like Pathfinder Second Edition has altered. Oh yeah, Dead Mike says polymorph, resurrection, and petrification had System Shock. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, it did. Forget all about that. Plus the saving throw for items whenever you got hurt, where you fall down pits or got burned or something like that, or decide to swim through some of that gray ooze. Your items could be affected by it. We don't really do that in fifth edition any longer. Or literally fifth edition has pointed out that items you're carrying are not affected by certain abilities or spell-like effects. Yeah, oh well. But yeah, I mean, so Pathfinder Second Edition has a +10, -10 crit level, meaning like if you roll, go with an attack roll. If you make an attack roll and it's 10 or more above what you needed above the DC, the difficulty class, then you make a critical attack, and then it's the opposite. It's a crit fail if it's 10 or more or less below what you needed. So if it's a 15, if you roll 5 or less, or maybe less than 5, then it's a crit fail, and if it's 25 or more, you had a critical success. Fifth edition does a thing like that, and it's tucked away in, of all things, the Medusa stat block. So in fifth edition, if you make a saving throw against getting petrified, that's 5 or more above what you need to make the save, you're not affected. And if it's 5 or less, you're not just restrained, but you failed. It's modulated. Something like that could also be incorporated. I know I'm going around in this big circle. Something else could be incorporated in the +5, -5, +10, -10 kind of region, where you fight a giant monster and it stomps on the ground, or it knocks over a castle wall to try to crush you or something, and you make a dex save to get out of the way. And based on your attack roll or your dex save or your acrobatics check or your athletics or whatever the case might be, further conditions that happen to you are based on the success and failure rate of how high or low your die roll is. So if you rolled, I missed my save by 1, then it's like, well, you only suffer some bludgeoning damage. But if you missed it by like 5, not only do you suffer the bludgeoning damage, but you get restrained because you're trapped in the stone. And then if it's below, if you miss it by 10 or more, it's like bludgeoning damage, maybe it's critted on you, plus you're restrained, plus some other effect or something, like your belongings are crushed, or you lose your weapon, or you of course, along with being restrained, you maybe suffer like a stunning effect, or maybe it happens over, instead of one round of a thing, maybe it happens, roll a d4, 3 rounds of stun, plus you're trapped, or you can't breathe, or something like that. Like, you could have something step up beyond it. Let's get back into our co-host here before we get out of here. Mike says, to be honest, talking about kaiju and weather really brings up how things should be more deadly in 5e, simply by being willing to invoke saving throws for massive damage. Yeah. Yeah. Or, yeah, well, it could be a, not, maybe not save or die, but it could be like, you know what? This, being in the presence of this thing is probably going to kill you. The only thing saving you is your saving throw. You could do it the other way, where you're making it a little bit reactive instead of proactive. Mike says, I may take away heal everything overnight on a rest and just make healing hit dice related and make drowning more deadly. Like, damage while drowning reduces time to get air. It literally knocks the air out of you. Yeah, I agree with the drowning suffocation rule. It it feels like it's based on a non-stressful situation. Like, I believe it's 1 minute per positive constitution bonus you have. So if you have a +2 con bonus, you can hold your breath for 2 minutes, or I think it's 1 minute plus, so you can hold your breath for 3 minutes. Now, that's incredibly long, but for a hero, that makes perfect sense under perfect conditions, right? But we're talking about stressful conditions, being grabbing your waist, being grabbed by a tentacle, plus you're trying to slash the eye of the monster, plus it's like, that doesn't really make much sense, right? The alligator grabs your foot and drags you down in the swamp. It's like, well, you're grappled, you're being chewed on, you're being tumble rolled, and you're drowning. Like, what? Yeah. I hear you, Mike. Deadman says D&D 5e had many rules for size. Tiny uses D4 for hit points. Yeah. Small uses D6. Medium uses D8. Large uses D10. Huge D12. And Gargantua uses D20. And I think that's their way of, instead of modulating damage, it's modulating hit points. But we know that in practice, it doesn't quite work, because monsters are modulated by how many hit points it has: 600, 700, 800. And instead of progressive success or failure, and it just feels like, it ends up feeling like a hollow victory when you're hitting a thing 4, 5, 6 times, and nothing mechanically is happening. Oh, you do 87 hit points, check mark. You do 93 hit points, check mark. You do 102 hit points, check mark. Is it almost dead? Halfway there. Okay. 62 hit points. Darn, rolled low. It after a while, you're like, well, other than taking away the numbers, shouldn't there be other things happening? And I feel like giant monsters aren't dynamic enough. Mike says, if a person can hold their breath for 5 minutes, they should be a goddamn SEAL. Now, listen, I'm not against a hero being able to do that, right? +5 con bonus, you're like 18 con, and I'm just like, holding your breath for forever. Not against that. I'm just saying, under stressful situations, the best swimmer would not be able to hold their breath for 3 minutes while being Navy SEAL wise. You're attacking a creature while you're being choked, while you're being bitten, while you're being tumbled. Yeah. Mike says, the whole purpose of a death roll, like a crocodile alligator, is to drown targets quickly. It takes seconds. Seconds. I assume that's what you meant, how to pronounce that. Yeah. Seconds, right? See, I think drowning should be measured in rounds. Like, if you've got a +1 con bonus, you get 1 plus your con bonus. So you got 2 rounds before you start suffocating. What do? That's stress, because we all know characters have multiple actions. If it takes, if on the 2 rounds you're active, on your third round you drop to 0 hit points. Between then and that third round you drop to 0 hit points. People can do things, but there's all, again, here we go with the timers. Tension timer. Do you save your ally who's being grabbed by the tentacled monster and being pulled down in the ocean or tossed to the countryside or something? Or do you once again roll an attack roll with your barbarian to hit it again? Maybe you might need to go after your drowning dwarven fellow that's being pulled down the raging river or something before they drown, right? And we don't, I think in practice, it doesn't come across as like, well, I can hold my breath for 2 minutes. That's let's see, 6 seconds, 10, 20 rounds. I can hold my breath before I start to suffocate. Great. 20 rounds. That's at a minimum of 40 actions. Yeah, no, that's not a threat at all. All right, guys. Before we get out of here, I just want to say, I can still see the chat, but I'm going to turn the chat off for just a moment. Again, full disclosure, um, uh, still working on this RPG project. I haven't mentioned very often. Work has been getting involved, and there's one thing, because I like to be as progressively open as possible, and this is an invitation to all of you guys that are very loyal to the channel. All of you are brilliant. All of you do your thing, and like I mentioned yesterday, I feel like there's something that can be done to. It's very difficult for all of us to scream at the top of our lungs to be heard in the stadium because it's too loud. And I feel like there is something we can do. I am doing a hard segue a little bit. Mike mentions the Kraken grabs you and begins to crush you in a tentacle, then smashes you against the ship before dragging you below the waves. Player, I can hold my breath for 5 minutes. Right. Let alone, let's see, no side effects for being smashed against the ship. No side effects for being crushed and grappled. No side effects for being pulled down into the depths of the ocean. It's like whatever. I get it. I know characters are heroes. They're Beowulf. But I don't know. I think there's space in there for us to do things. All right, getting back to this is the marketing of me. This is why I turned the chat over and turned it off. One of the things I think that, full disclosure, that I'm working on, and I think there's space for it, is for us to be. There should be a nexus of creators that all support each other, and I would love to have. Mike, we talked about this a little bit. I would love to be able to offer other creators out there, and there's a lot of, I guess I'm going to call them, for lack of a better term, niche creators, micro creators, that on their own, what they do and how you do your thing doesn't feel like you're being a content creator, but you are. The person who just draws sketches of weapons and swords, the person who paints minis and records them, the person who makes funny, sarcastic ass T-shirts and baseball caps or something, the person who hand draws maps in their free time or something. Maybe you really want to break out into the greater RPG world, but you can't. And I'm working on a method to make that a possibility for other people. And um, um, not creatively, full disclosure, I want this to benefit myself as well. I'm a very busy person in a personal life, and I have zero marketing skills. And most of us in the RPG world, not only are we socially awkward, we have actually terrible marketing skills. Not just no, I think we're negative marketers, if that makes sense. But I think there's a way to do it. And so, if I could share something with you guys, uh, um, as an example, I just want to show something to you, to for a full disclosure. Um, if this is something, if you just take a look at it, where's my window at? Here we go. I shared this with you guys before yesterday, and I'm going to bring it up right now. I'm going to bring up an image, and I'm going to click through some of these images here. And these are just examples. I'm not centered on them. There's a honestly, to be honest with you, Deadman did an awesome job modify one of these images, but let's see if we can do this here. This is an wow. Oh, I can't flip. Let's see. No, this is an image, an icon of sorts that I wanted to bring up that would represent something that I'm calling the creators conclave. It's a sword. It is topped with a flame, like a royal flame. It is the eight limbs of a spider, like reaching out to stretch everywhere. They are. It's also emo. There's like blades that are cutting through the shaft of all the noise out there. It is reaching beyond the circle just a little bit. You're breaking through, almost like coming out of the box. It's surrounded by a circle, like the Knights of the Round Table, and I think it's just kind of cool. This symbol, this image, and I feel like it may even be the kind of thing where, um, as an example of sorts, to um, let me see if I could switch this out here a little bit. I'm going to change the imagery here. An example of like being able to draw upon some a thing of creators that we can use for ourselves to be a brand that all of the rest of you that are creators can latch onto. Here's another image I'm going to share with you. I wish this was a little bit easier, but at least it's not drawing a lot of attention here. Here's another image I want to slave with you. This is, the Creators Conclave. And why imagery? Because verbally we hear things, and if the same thing is heard a lot of times, perception makes reality. Second thing, imagery. When you hear an image, you see an image, much like the Nike symbol, it is attached to a brand. It is attached to something. And what I would like to do is to gather like-minded individuals that are across the interwebs, people in different social media platforms and whatnot, gather us all together and say, hey, in addition to what you're doing, however you're branding yourself, also with a call to action or something, you too can be a member of the Creators Conclave, or hey, check out what I'm doing and what other people are doing within the Creators Conclave to have this high tide floating all ships. And to me, I think this might be a great idea. I haven't thought it all the way through, but I am also a type of person that's like, you can only do it when you do it, right? It's only done when you do it, and maybe it's the kind of thing that might take on a life of its own, and I would love it to be able to be the kind of thing that could take on a life of its own. So anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of here. I'm thank you for letting me ramble on quite a bit. Thank you very much for your attention, and contact me in any way you want to. Drop a comment. I read all the comments. DM me, whatever. If you think what I've just rambled on about, I haven't quite gotten the elevator pitch yet, so I'm practicing it with you guys. But anyway, lastly, just thanks for just being part of the show. Thanks for your attention. If you're mulling it over and you have an idea, just let me know. There's a let me see if I could pull this up because Deadman did a great job on. Let's see if I can bring this up here. I'm gonna end the show. Yeah, kitty. Yeah. Let's see if I can switch this out. Yeah, Deadman mentions make a righty turtle cat. Make a 5 to 10 minute elevator pitch for this Sunday in a separate video. I was thinking about doing that. Yeah, make a like you said, a 5 to 10 minute elevator pitch, maybe showing some of the imagery. Hey, Kitty, that'd be a great idea for me to do. You know, I'm not a very good very good. I like interacting with people, so I'm not very good at the talking head part of it because I've gotten away from it so much. But you are absolute. That doesn't necessarily mean you're not right. So yes, maybe a 5 to 10 minute elevator pitch, and of course I could take that. My producer wants me to stop now. It's been an hour. 5 to 10 minute elevator pitch, and maybe that elevator pitch I can, like a Kickstarter, show that video with some imagery and other things to other people who would benefit from the same thing. I agree. So, you know what? I get up hella early. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. Maybe write a couple of notes, couple of bullet points, and whatnot. Yeah, yeah. That's the tale of my kitty. Let's see if I could get her on camera a little bit. Hey, kitty, say hello. Oh, she's gonna resist. There it is. All right, guys. Have a great one. Thank you very much for being here. Ride eternal, shiny, and collaborative. Yeah. Well, the only problem, one thing I'm resisting about doing this is the idea that like I might have to be a web hoster, and I can't take on the function of of web hosting. But maybe if it's only just putting in people's bios and organizing people's imagery and things like that, what they do, their connections and whatnot. But yeah. And also, there's also the negative parts. You got to think of the negative parts. People who want to be part of a collaborative, but they don't want to do the work. Even though it's like crowd surfing, you know, your favorite rock star jumps off the stage. The reason that person doesn't fall flat on their face is because everyone's doing their little bit to hold that person up. And that's kind of the idea of a collaborative. It's like you don't have to work that hard. You just have to do your small part. You know, mention the collaborative, embrace other people, and maybe ooh, there's her kitty's bunghole. You show your bunghole off there, Sophie. Yeah. All right, guys, I got to get out of here because all you're seeing is tail. Great. Have a great one, guys. I will see thee later.